One sec.
Welcome to Vin and Mike, episode 11, here on Monday night. What's up, Mike?
Hello, Vinny.
What's going on? That music's still going. You got to play
rocking out on this Monday.
Holy cow. a lot of fun after this past weekend, a few
Final Four. Can't believe it.
A few things went on. Yeah, definitely a great Elite Eight into the Final Four, but we have a good show here tonight, and Mike bringing our special guest tonight.
Yeah, so our special guest is on the podcast, episode 11. We bring in new people every week. So this guy, been friends with him for a couple years now. Really passionate about his Green Bay Packers. Very passionate about the New York Rangers. And just a great sports guy all around. I love texting with him, talking about our bets for better or for worse. But he's always great to speak to, always adds good commentary. And we look forward to having him. So, Mr. Chris Mangano, welcome to the Vin and Mike podcast. You are here.
Gentlemen, what's going on? Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show. I've been watching you guys and listening to the podcast and love the content you're putting out. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, Chris. We look forward to digging in deeper about the Packers and some of your stories later in the podcast. Again, I always forget this when we start the show. Instagram, Vin and Mike podcast. That's where you can see all our bets and everything else that we post. I just posted my unders tonight for the NBA. I did 4 unders, so I was feeling like an underfest, Chris. Sometimes you get somebody that texts you one under. I won't mention who that was, but he's on the show with us. So I took that one under and parlayed it into 4 totals. So we'll see how it plays out. Most likely I'll hit 3 of the 4, and the 4th one that the one person sent me won't hit.
I'll get a phone call later.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to see those unders, they're there. I guess some of the games already started already, so I'll check them out as the night goes on. But let's start off with this Final Four. Mike, I'll let you just go right into it. Go ahead, give me what you saw.
Before we even get into the Final Four, my hat's off to the St. Peter's Peacocks. They outshined everyone's expectations. It was great for New Jersey. They played with such heart. North Carolina just came into that game, and you knew in the first 5 minutes it was a different kind of game. St. Peter's was never really trailing in the tournament, and they just played tremendous defense, especially Leaky Black on that team. He held Doug Edder to, I think, 2 or 4 points. I mean, that's just not like his character. They have such amazing talent. You got R.J. Davis as a guard. Armando Bacot had 20 points and 22 rebounds. Just think about that. And just St. Peter's was never in the game. UNC came in as an 8th seed. They're not playing like an 8th seed. And like I said, when you look at this tournament, it's all about who's getting hot now and what could happen. So and again, I want to just shout that out to St. Peter's. I really hope they continue to have great success. It was so fun to watch. It was a true Cinderella story. First team ever to get into the Elite Eight at the 15th seed. So hats off to you, St. Peter's.
Yeah, and I think for us, it makes us think a little bit more about it, since they're a Jersey City school, and at one time the 3 of us all worked in Jersey City. So I think, with that local flair for us, and then just in the general New York, New Jersey area, you pay a lot more attention to it, and it was great to see a team like St. Peter's with 3,000 people, that go to the school total. We were looking at the budgets of the sports program before we came on. Their total budget is $7.5 million, and they said the 4 teams that they played the budget was 300 plus million of the four teams that they played, their sports budget. So, just those little things that you look at. It's pretty cool to see. Chris, some of your thoughts on St. Peter's and this Final Four and the tournament in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you guys said, right, just an unbelievable run. First 15 seed to get to the Elite Eight. That's, just a feat in and of itself, and has been just great to watch. From my perspective, Doug Edert actually went to my rival high school. So,
I did not know that.
Despite that, I was still rooting for him. Obviously, a small school like that coming from a 15 seed and, beating some real blue bloods in the tournament. It was exciting to watch. They played great. I saw an interesting interview with their head coach, he was talking about how COVID really just made them who they were. I think they had only won about 3 games prior to COVID. They had about a 2-month break, completely revamped their game plan, and they reeled off like 18 straight wins following that. So pretty unbelievable story. Been fun to watch. But, like you said, Mike, right, just teams are getting hot at the right time. And I think Baycott, has probably been maybe the most dominant player in the tournament thus far. And UNC played a great game. They really did.
Yeah.
And getting back to Vinny, the actual Final Four, this is Vinny and I were talking about this earlier, that it's just amazing that Duke has never played North Carolina in the tournament after all these years. And they've been in the tournament so many times. So there's so much hype about Coach K's last dance. And I look at this matchup, and again, these games have not been easy so far. They're definitely not easy now. But I think you have a Carolina team that's flying high, and I don't even want people to look at them as an ace seed. The thing that these two teams have in common is there's not a lot of depth. And what I mean by that is they don't play a lot of bench players. So it's really the 5 or 6 in the rotation for both teams. So everyone has to be, at their best game. If we look at Duke, they got past Cal Fullerton easily. Michigan State, even though the score they lost, it was a closer game than the score showed. Then they beat a tough Texas Tech team, and then Arkansas recently. And look at what they have. I mean, Paolo Banchero, he's been unbelievable. So Duke really, North Carolina has to really come up with a plan to either double team or somehow stop this guy, because he's been a force. He's like the Colin Gillespie of Villanova. He's a leader. He leads this team. Then you have Wendell Moore at the forward, AJ Griffin, Mark Williams. They're really stacked. So North Carolina, I mean, people were even giving them doubts when they played Marquette. Remember at the very beginning, and they beat them. They came in as an 8 seed. They beat the 9th seed. And they beat Baylor. Even though Baylor came back, they dominated that game for pretty much 36 minutes. So that was impressive. They beat a number 1 seed, and then they beat UCLA, which honestly, I think I liked UCLA. I'm not going to lie. I thought they had a lot, and they beat them. And then they beat the St. Peter's team. And even though St. Peter's was a 15 seed, no one could stop St. Peter's defense. No one could stop their offense, and they did it. So I think they've been more impressive. If we look at the matchups this year, Duke destroyed them at Chapel Hill the first game, but then North Carolina beat them, as you know, the very last game, in the tournament. So we look at that, and that to me is more of an indicator how this game is going to go. So I think, Vinny, what's the point spread in this one? Is it 4?
It's 4 right now. Duke's -4.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm honestly going, I like North Carolina. I know a lot of people on this, Coach K, last hurrah, Duke's going to do it. I just think NC's the better team. And I think that, they have a very good shot of doing this. How about you guys?
I was impressed with the way Duke played against Texas Tech. I thought that was their best win of the tournament. Texas Tech's defense, to me, was extremely tough. They played them hard throughout that whole game. I'm a huge fan of Mark Williams. I think he's a superstar in the making there. He's got a very impressive low post game. He plays really, really good defense. He grabs a lot of rebounds. He's a hustler. I just think that he's impressed me a lot. North Carolina, extremely impressive, as you said. They're at this point in the tournament, these are 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? There's no longer an 8 seed, a 2 seed. These are the top 4 teams left. They're the teams, they're the teams to beat. And like you said, it's amazing that in the history of Duke and Carolina and all the great teams that both these teams have put out through the years, they've never played each other once in a tournament. It's a great way for Coach K to finish up his career, win or lose, to have this North Carolina game. I just think Duke's going to figure out a way to win it and get themselves to the championship game. That's my feelings on it.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm excited to see the guard matchup in this game. Wendell Moore Jr. has been obviously, great throughout the tournament and all season. So that's going to be a really good matchup because UNC's guards are playing really well as well. But like you said, Banchero is just he's a game changer, right? I mean, very rarely do you see a guy 6'10", 250 who can really play just about every position on the floor. I mean, his mid-range game is there. He can shoot the three. He can get to the rim. He just does it all. So, it's a tough one to pick. I think UNC covers a 4-point spread, and it's a close game. But I do think Duke pulls it off. The Coach K, it's just you can't write this up better, right? Just Final Four playing UNC for a chance to go to a national championship game is about as good as you could draw it up. So yeah. I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be a great game, but I do think Duke pulls off a close one.
Yeah, it's definitely. It's just. I mean, I would have never thought Duke would even have gotten to the Final Four the way their side of the bracket was, and they just, like I said, I was just really impressed at that Texas Tech game. I really thought Texas Tech was a terrible matchup for them because the way they play defense and their size and their guard play and everything, and it was a struggle early on. They Texas Tech. It was a real tough game. The half was tough. Everything was tough in that one, and they figured out a way to win it. So that, to me, that was the game for me. That's going to push them to that next level. So that's the way I keep looking at it every time.
Okay, and then we have the Kansas Villanova game, and I think Kansas. I don't know if you guys agree with me on. I think they've been the biggest sleeper team in this tournament. Out of all the 1 seeds, I don't think they've been talked about much. And I've had some scares with them, especially against that Creighton team. But I think they've bounced back. They played an outstanding game against Miami. They were actually down by 6 points at the half, and this is where great coaching comes in. And they just smothered them on defense. And they were taking more high percentage shots, and they took care of business. Villanova, they're going to have a key injury, and that's Justin Moore. He's out. So that's going to be crucial. So the other guys like Jermaine Samuels and Colin Gillespie, they have to really step it up. The one thing I've said consistently about Villanova is the free throw shooting, which is number 1. And what happens in these games when teams have poor free throw shooting, they don't usually end up winning. Villanova makes very little mistakes. They're very well disciplined. They've had a great tournament. But this Kansas team is, again, I think that it's going to be a very interesting matchup. The spread in this game, too, Vinny, I think, was it 4.5?
4.5.
So
yeah.
I think Kansas wins, but I think Villanova covers the spread in this one. So I would take Villanova plus 4.5. Again, that's a key injury. I don't think it's going to be significant. I don't think any of these games are going to be blowouts. But I do think Kansas I think they picked it up at the right time. They're playing very well. I was, again, very, very impressed what they did in that second half. Mitch Lightfoot, who came in, he's fun to watch at the center position. Jalen Wilson, David McCormick, they all been playing so well. And again, I just want to emphasize it's just looking at trends here, and I feel like Kansas is going to win this one. And maybe I'm unorthodox here, but I see a Kansas UNC final. And I don't think a lot of people are going to say that, but I'm sticking to what I think, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the more injury is very significant for Villanova. I know a lot of people are like saying, "Oh, it would impact Villanova over a 6-week period, and if during the season and everything." But this is you're playing Kansas, in a really really tough matchup, a team that really, like, offensively, their shooting is probably the best of the 4 teams left, and I think that's where the injury comes into play. I think Villanova is one of these teams that likes to slow play. I think the over under even on this game is 132.5. I think anytime Villanova is playing in these games, I like the unders just because of the way they play defense.
Yeah.
Even despite, I think, Kansas's offensive efficiency and the way they can score, I think they still can come in at under 132.5. The 4.5 spread, I think Kansas is going to win this game. I could see them winning this game 65-57, something like that. I think 4.5. Kansas is going to cover it, and I just feel the injury is the big thing, and why Kansas will end up taking this game.
Yeah, I think it's a great coaching matchup, one which I'm excited to see. You got best dressed guy in college basketball, and Jay Wright. He's obviously he knows how he's been in this situation, right, many times. But I do agree that the more injury is going to be a little bit too much for them to overcome against a team like Kansas. I mean, Kansas is just their disciplined team. They can get you. They can score the ball from really anywhere on the court, and they're going to come out firing. They've played extremely well, Mike. To your point, I absolutely agree. They've been one of the most under talked about teams in this tournament, despite being a 1 seed, and they've taken care of business. I think. In this game, I kind of agree with Vin here. I think Kansas will cover the spread, and I think the under is probably a safe bet. I might tease the two of those together, get a few extra points, and on both Kansas and the under. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a really good game. Kansas runs through Gillespie. He's been, again, one of the best players in this tournament. He's gotten it done night in and night out. But I think the injury is going to be significant, and I think Kansas will get it done.
Yeah. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
How about brackets right now?
Oh,
the broken bracket.
Let's dig into our Vin and Mike podcast bracket here. Hold on, let me scroll through this nightmare of brackets that every single one that I have and everything that I picked. All right, even though I'm third right now in the Vin and Mike, I'll be lucky to finish third. So right now, the guy Zach, who we made fun of last week for picking all number ones. He's still in first overall with 62 points, despite picking all number ones for the Final Four. But he did have Gonzaga winning it all, so he basically has Kansas, I think, going to the finals, and then from there, that's it. He'll be done at that point. Really, the person with the best shot, Chris, in this is Mike. He has Kansas. He can score 101 points. The closest that anyone else can get is 95. The guy John has Villanova. So, we'll see how that plays out. But right now, if things go the way of the Kansas route, Mike could pull this off, and the first Vin and Mike podcast bracket might go to Mike.
And it's not rigged, people. I'm telling you. I was telling Chris I had future bets on Houston, and man, they bombed against Villanova. But I also have future bets on Kansas because of the bracket. So It would be awesome if they win, but right now it's so hard to predict. Let's get through the Final Four first.
Well, you were talking about Kansas from the start.
I was.
You picked them at the beginning of the tournament.
Sure
so even though you gave up on them after the Creighton game and said
I admit it.
You said that's the end of them.
I was so pissed off after that game. I said,
and then you put all your winning eggs on Houston, and now all of a sudden you're back on the Kansas bandwagon.
I am back on the Kansas. I will say it. I admit it. I love the way they played.
Well, if this tournament has taught us anything, it's that anything could happen. I was all in on Arizona, so I thought they were a nightmare matchup for just about everyone with their size, and clearly that was wrong too. So
yeah,
I thought the most impressive win was St. Peter's over Purdue. I with that size advantage, that was so impressive to me. I
absolutely
don't look back at that.
Yeah, they besides the Carolina game, St. Peter's was dominant in every game in the fact that they kept control, limited turnovers, made big shots, like all the the little things you look for teams to figure out how to win and dominate a game. Despite the close scores, you look for those little things that you get from teams to pull it out, and that was impressive. That you're right, that Purdue matchup where the size was astronomical against them, and to figure it out. North Carolina then just had way too much size, way too much athleticism, and really took full advantage of it. And again, then the turnovers came in, and all the other stuff that St. Peter's wasn't doing is really what turned that around. But you're right, that was definitely an impressive thing. But I was high on Gonzaga coming into this tournament. Finally, I thought they were the number one team overall. I really liked the way they played early in the season, the way they destroyed UCLA early in the year, the way they played throughout the whole season. I thought they had a lot of momentum coming into this tournament. I liked the way their bracket was set up. I thought they had games that were winnable for them all throughout. I like that whole side of the bracket even to get to the finals and everything, and it just crashed and burned for them again. I guess in one of these days they'll figure it out, but right now they're one of these teams that people start looking at and going, yeah, they're a 1 seed or a 2 seed, and you're going to start seeing people not pick them in their brackets and not pick them, and that'll be the year that they just go like boom, and that's it. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting tournament. I mean, I guess in every year it's interesting one way or the other, but ultimately when you look at it, we got a 1, 2 2s, and an 8. So when you really look at it, we have 3 of the top 8 teams coming into the tournament that are in the Final Four. So it does play out somewhat the way the brackets are set up.
Yeah.
All right.
Gibbs.
We'll flip. Well, actually, one more thing before 151 is the over under with this Duke Carolina game. Mike, what do you feel about that number?
I think I could go with Vinny's unders. I think I know what to say.
It's been a big under fest, right?
It's been a big under fest, and I think that trend continues, especially with these matchups. So I like the under in that game. I do.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, it's I'm leaning towards the over. I know in the last round of games, I think 11 or 10 of the last 11 unders that have hit. Yep. So it's definitely been an unders play for this tournament so far. But with these two teams, I just think there's going to be a lot of points put up. I could see, something in the 80s on either side for score. They both these teams can score from a lot of different places on the floor, and like I said, the guard matchup is going to be really good. But they can both get work the ball inside. They both have good big men. Baycott has been again one of the most dominant players in the tournament. So I'm leaning towards the over on this one.
Okay, cool. I'm going to continue with the Vinny unders. So just keep betting unders until I can't get them anymore. All right, so let's move to the NFL again, like we like to every week, and this quarterback situations are still going crazy throughout the NFL. Just tremendous amount of movement, as we're well aware of, when we spoke about in the past shows. It's just insane amount of quarterback movement. Probably the most I could ever remember. I've never recalled anything like this. Starting quarterbacks going everywhere, but we still have two starters from last year that are still on the bubble of what they're going to do with them. John Lynch came out today, 49ers general manager, and said he doesn't see him cutting Jimmy G. I think they're either going to trade him or play him. And that's where they're heading. He just thinks he's too good to just release. Mike, some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Jimmy G, he led the 49ers to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl in the last 3 seasons. He won about 70% of his games. So, I mean, the guy is not a piece of garbage. He's good. So, and I think both these quarterbacks, Jimmy G and Baker Mayfield, should find a home. If I just feel they both been, Baker Mayfield has had some tough times, but I mean, come on, when he came in, he definitely belongs to a team. And Jimmy G, I think San Francisco should keep him at this point. I think Baker Mayfield, Seattle may be a good place for him, and the Pete Carroll design of offense, you may be able to see that. But I really hope he gets to a team, because after the Deshaun Watson thing, you could have sworn that he would have been moved out of there right away. It's just very interesting that he's still around.
I think it's the big salary. It's the $18 million that's guaranteed and all that. I think they're trying to figure out, if you're a team, if you want to take on that 18 million, how does your cap look? The whole thing. If you get Cleveland to take some of it back, I don't know how Cleveland takes any money back with all the guaranteed money they gave Watson. 46 million a year guaranteed. Again, I don't know how the cap actually plays out in these situations. I know there's all kinds of movement and it's front loaded, back loaded, all this cap stuff. But I think the Baker thing a lot has to do with the cap. I'm kind of interested in the Jimmy G situation, because they did draft Trey Lance 3rd overall last year. When you pick someone that high, you would think that they would want to, have him ready to go the next year. And I think if you bring Jimmy G back, you put Trey Lance another year behind them. Now we know certain guys have done well in those situations, and other guys have not. And then let's just say Jimmy G again goes to an NFC championship, or does go to a Super Bowl, or does win. Then do you move Trey Lance, or how do you move Trey Lance, or do you end up having a whole Nick Foles, Carson Wentz situation where you get rid of the Super Bowl guy because you think the other guy's your franchise, and you mess up the entire thing altogether. But Chris, I know you as a Packers fan, with Rodgers being drafted, he sat behind Favre for a bunch of years, and that was an interesting situation. But at the end of the day, you had 2 franchise quarterbacks for many, many years. What are your feelings on the Lance Garoppolo situation?
For the way I look at it, it's hard to argue against John Lynch for just, with his resume, what he's done in San Francisco. He's put together, probably one of the best overall rosters in the league. And obviously that team has been very successful with Jimmy Garoppolo. So from his perspective, I understand where he's coming from, and I understand that it would be hard to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, but at the same time, you have your ace in the hole, right? If you want to roll with Jimmy Garoppolo to start the season, obviously what you have in Trey Lance, and maybe internally the conversations are different, right? Maybe they feel that Trey Lance isn't ready to start, or I would probably too early to say they made a mistake or anything, or for anyone to make that assumption. But, if he feels strongly about Jimmy Garoppolo, it's hard to argue, his resume and what he's done, and what the team, for that matter, has done within the last few years, right? They've, been despite maybe not being there in early season, they've been a championship contender for years now. So, and Jimmy Garoppolo, regardless of what people say, has been a major part of that. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is, arguably one of the best designers of offense in the NFL right now. And, he's successfully designed an offense that Jimmy Garoppolo can be successful in. And they've done a lot of that, obviously, with the offensive line and the running game, and a great defense, and allowed Jimmy Garoppolo to do what he needs to do. Right. I think in big game situations, obviously, if you look at the Packers divisional matchup in the playoffs this year, maybe more so of a detriment than anything else, but he got it done when it mattered. He put those last few first downs together to ice the game and win that game and move on. It's hard to disagree. Do I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a top 15 quarterback in the league? No, I don't. But it's we're in a position right now in the NFL where there's great parity amongst quarterbacks in the league. There's a lot of young quarterbacks that have been very successful early. And where does Baker Mayfield too on the other end of the spectrum in this conversation? Where does he fit in? And I just don't really see a market for him right now. Like you said, Vin, right? $18 million cap hit. Nobody wants to take that on. If I most likely the way that turns out is, they're not going to be able to put unless Cleveland is willing to, retain some of his salary. How are they going to move him? And, if they don't agree to do that, then they're going to get stuck eating half his salary, by whatever it is, a start of training camp. And then, at that point, somebody's going to swoop in and, put a minor trade package together to acquire him and, pay him a modest salary. And Cleveland's going to maintain, part of his contract anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's obviously it makes things more difficult with the parity at the quarterback position amongst the league. There's a lot of talent out there. We'll see. I mean, I think Trey Lance has potential to be a really good player. He's got all the tools. Maybe they feel one more season with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm and kind of work him into the roster. But I'm excited to see how it plays out one way or the other. Because if you look at the league a year from now, there could be, a lot of market value for some of these guys with, likelihood of, Tom Brady's and Aaron Rodgers potentially retiring or moving on.
Or if the Jets go 2-14 and Zach Wilson is,
I think what I've seen from Trey Lance in limited fashion has been pretty good. I thought he was good and when I saw him. And as much as 18 million doesn't seem like a big hit in the quarterback market now, I think it's big because there's a lot of uncertainty about Baker, right? And it's a 5th-year option. So after, you're picking him up, and then at that point, you have to make a decision. Is he your franchise quarterback or are you going to release him? And then what have you given up to get him at all? Are you giving up a first-round pick, a second-round pick? I mean, Matt Ryan went for a third-round pick. And again, Matt Ryan is 37, 38, 39 years old, somewhere in there. But Matt Ryan's also, been through Super Bowls, won an MVP, has got a big history behind him where Baker doesn't. So, what are you actually going to give up to get him and then take the cap hit? And then let's just say he's not good. You've given up this for somebody that you're just going to let go to free agency, or he is this good and now we have to pay him. And are we in that situation, to retain him? So I think there's a lot of question marks there for teams. And, what kind of team wants to bring him in? Mike mentions maybe Seattle, but is Seattle going through a whole rebuild phase, right? Like, are they even want to spend $18 million on Baker? They have Drew Lock, who they picked up in the Wilson trade. The draft is coming up. Are they going to go that route? And then like Chris says, what other market is there for him? What other team is there? Maybe Pittsburgh, but we know Cleveland and Pittsburgh aren't going to trade, and maybe the Giants is a market, but
I actually heard something crazy that he goes to the Falcons and it's a quarterback competition with Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean they gave Mariota only a two-year deal.
I heard something like that.
Whoever's going there is probably holding the stick for somebody. I think Atlanta's looking in the draft this year potentially at a quarterback. I don't know which way they go. If they go Willis, I'm not sure. What they're looking at. That's the one thing about the NFL, right? We think we know exactly what our teams are going to do. We think we're tuned in, but we have no clue what these conversations are behind the scenes. Nothing really leaks out, when it comes to draft time. Usually the first overall pick is usually understood because that team is locked in. That's who they're going to take. But even this year, you're not really sure where Jacksonville's going with that, if they're going to even retain it. Are they going offensive line? Are they going defensive line? Are they not going either line? There's just so much uncertainty, and I think that's what makes the NFL phenomenal also is your team, the previous year could win 5 games and next year is a Super Bowl contender. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But ultimately, we know who the key players are going into this season. We know who the big teams are. And then it's dependent on, does Jimmy G bring you over the top? Like, let's say he goes to Miami. I think he's better than Tua. You got Tyreek Hill there. You got Jalen Waddle. His old offensive coordinators there. They brought in Mostert as a running back. They brought in Chase Edmonds. They have a lot of pieces in Miami. I think that's a great place for him to go. But I would think Miami is going to want a lot back, for him, right? I mean, Miami's not going to want to give up a lot for him. And I think San Fran's going to want a lot back. So there's a lot to that. Would you take Baker Mayfield over Tua also? That's another thing. Or how high is Miami on Tua? I'm not a big Tua fan. I wasn't a big fan of him coming into the NFL. I think he's just a small guy when in terms of his stature. I think it doesn't translate well to the NFL. I think he has ability, but the injuries in college bothered me early. The injuries in the pros bother me. If I was Miami, I would definitely be all over the Jimmy G market.
Yeah, hard to argue. I mean, I agree with you, Vin, right? I mean, from a Tua perspective, I think he's kind of interesting to say, but he's almost kind of proven to be one-dimensional. He's the offense that they designed for him, I don't think was necessarily the best, but they kind of used him more as almost just a run first quarterback. Trust him to make the short throw over the middle, check downs to his tight ends, to his running backs. I don't know if he's got the arm strength to really be as successful, especially now that you had the speed that they have at the wide receiver position. Can he even get those guys the ball? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. From a Baker perspective, I don't think any team would be smart right now to force the issue, right? Because it doesn't make sense. It's going to play out. He's not going to play in Cleveland. We know that. So, unless something interesting happens with this whole with the Deshaun Watson story, and maybe these that could play out a lot of different ways. So we'll see. The other interesting thing to think about too is the cap hit in next season, or if you look 2 seasons ahead, it could be $20-30 million more than what it is now, and the whole QB market could get completely reset. So there's a lot of interesting ways it could play out. I thought Houston might be a good trade partner too, but clearly they had no interest in Baker Mayfield because they would have forced something in that. So yeah, I mean, it's already been probably the hottest off season that we've seen in recent memory in the NFL. And it could heat up even more. So
it's just been wild, just wild. Here's something that you talked about the NFL cap, and it's quite interesting. It's going to go through the roof in the next few years. The Amazon deal for Thursday Night Football. Do you know how much they're paying for Thursday Night Football this year, Mike? Do you have any idea?
I don't even want to take a guess because I'll probably be so off. So just tell me so I don't embarrass myself.
It's $1 billion for this season. $1 billion for 18 games, right? There's 18 weeks.
Sick.
So 18 games, they're paying $1 billion on top of what they're paying Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit and everybody else that's associated with it. I mean, it's just insane the amount of money. But that $1 billion, I think it's 52% of it goes towards the cap, something like that. It's something like that. So you're talking 520 million more onto the cap divided by 32, roughly 15-20 million dollars a team more just in the Amazon deal. So then you just take on the other TV deals as time goes on and what they add up in the revenue streams. And we're out of COVID now, right? Full attendance, the stadiums are going to be generating a tremendous amount of revenue again. The teams are going to be generating a tremendous amount of revenue again. That's all going to equal up. And I think that plays big into these teams paying these guys now. We think these quarterback money is big now. Excuse me. These teams are making these moves because they know the cap is going to be able to pay quarterbacks $60 to $70 million down the line, and they're locking them up now so they don't have to give them that crazy money as time goes on. So teams are taking this initial hit knowing that all this money is coming down the road, and the NFL is just a behemoth when it comes to these deals. I mean, Apple's paying Major League Baseball to broadcast 2 games a week, so 162 game season. So you're talking 324 games. Apple's paying Major League Baseball $55 million for that, where the Amazon's paying the NFL $1 billion for 18 games. I mean, that's when you put it into real context of how much of a behemoth the NFL is at this point. So it's just incredible.
It sure is. You said so Al Michaels going to so Chris Collinsworth, what's
he's staying there. Mike Tirico's taking over.
Okay.
And then Aikman and Buck are going to Monday Night Football.
Yeah, heard about
and
that.
Kevin Burkhardt, who 20 years ago was a car salesman, is now going to be the lead guy for Fox, which is a great story. A great story about him is he was a car salesman. He was a broadcast major car salesman. He was taking his tapes and sending them to all the different radio stations in the New York, New Jersey area. And I think it was WABC, one of the AM channels picked them up, and then FAN picked them up. Eventually he was on SNY network as a sideline guy. Like, he'd be the guy in the stands eating the hot dog, interviewing people. And then Fox finally picked him up, and then he became, play-by-play guy for Fox. And I don't know where he fell in the rankings last year, but now with those guys gone, he's the number one guy on Fox. That's just like one of those great stories when you hear that kind of stuff.
They're gonna say that about us in 20 years.
Yeah, these guys were the number one podcast show back 20 years ago, and now they're 86 for some reason. I don't know how that happened. They dropped 86 spots over 20 years.
Oh, man.
All I know is we're still number one in Belgium. That's where we're number one.
That's unbelievable.
Belgium.
Unbelievable. We got to meet those fans. Anyway, so again, we bring in a special guest every week, and we talk about specific topics. So we're happy to have Chris here. And Chris, we just talked about NFL and a couple quarterbacks, but we never spoke to you about Davante Adams and the re-signing of Aaron Rodgers. So first and foremost, thoughts on that?
Start with Aaron Rodgers, because those cards fell first. I was excited about the deal, honestly. In the beginning of, very end of last season, there were 3 ways this could have played out. He could have retired. He could have, we put a trade package together to send him elsewhere, or he resigns with the Packers. As long as he didn't retire, I'd kind of made up my, my piece that I was comfortable with either scenario because obviously, what transpired between Seattle and Denver, I'm sure that same trade package was offered to Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers. With his re-signing, listen, that meant to me that signaled that, we wanted Aaron Rodgers to be here, obviously, and we were going to be all in to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. So if that came to light and that came to fruition, I would be happy with basically leveraging our future for the next few years to get that done. So I was very happy with that piece. On a side note, move over to the Davante Adams situation and how that played out. Davante Adams was a huge part of that puzzle, so to see how that played out was tough. It certainly was, but yeah, I think, and who knows what card fell first, but I think from the Packers standpoint, not to say that they necessarily played it wrong. It was clear that a deal wasn't going to get done for obvious reasons because the two sides were just too far apart at the time. So the option was to tag him and continue. I don't think anyone ever anticipated, the Packers organization or Davante Adams, that he was going to play the season on a tag. They were set on getting a deal done. Obviously, that didn't happen. Whether that the Packers organization were dragging their feet, which is certainly plausible, or the fact that he wanted out. I don't know if he maybe felt slighted by the Rodgers deal. That's certainly a possible scenario. But also, you can't discount the Derek Carr connection. Those two are best friends. He wanted to play with Derek Carr, I think, wanted to be in Vegas. He grew up a Raiders fan in the Bay Area, and wanted to play for that organization despite them not being there anymore. I understand that, but still, it's I think for Davante Adams, that meant a lot to him. And I don't think he really gave the Packers an opportunity to counter that. I think he made up his mind. The deal came together. They paid him a lot of money. And the cards fell the way that they did. It's obviously a huge blow because of what Davante Adams means to Aaron Rodgers and our entire offense and the organization. I have nothing bad to say about Davante Adams. The guy is, one of the most class guys in the NFL. And always carried himself that way throughout his entire tenure with the Packers. But at the end of the day, right, he's got to get his money. I understand that. He's got to get his money. And I'm sad the way that it turned out because, obviously winning a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers definitely hinged a lot on Davante Adams. And, to add insult to injury, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, just signed with Kansas City. That was a huge blow for us as well because now we're looking at a situation where really the only two wide receivers that we have under contract right now are Alan Lazard, who's been injured but has just been starting to come on and get build a repertoire with Aaron Rodgers, and Randall Cobb, who's obviously well past his prime at this point, despite the Rodgers connection that he has. So that was a huge blow as well, because MVS had a big, he had a really good relationship with Aaron Rodgers on the field. And, if you look at the stats, when MVS, he was injured a good bit this year, but when he was on the field, when he played, the Packers offense scored 7 more points a game. So that's significant. And, now I don't know where the cards fall, right? We have the draft capital now. So what do we do? Right. I think the initial reaction was try to put together a trade package to go after DK Metcalf. That seems less likely by the day. So now what do you do? I guess, probably the next best option is to, leverage your 2 first-round picks, try to move up into the top 15 and draft Chris Olave or someone of that caliber. But it's still, it doesn't leave you in a good place, right? Because it's still, we're seeing it a little bit more in today's NFL, but rarely do you see rookie wide receivers translate immediately. Obviously, I think we've kind of been a little bit jaded. Jamar Chase and, guys like that have been kind of outliers in more recent years, but it's hard, it's hard for, an NFL wide receiver to to pick it up in his rookie year. And not only that, but play with Aaron Rodgers, who, is very much a timing guy. And just that it's hard to put in that work in one singular offseason. So something has to happen, right? I mean, obviously, with the Aaron Rodgers contract, the Packers are all in right now.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
it's either win or bust. I mean, that's it with that kind of money.
Yeah. So, they've kept the defense intact and signed Jaron Reed as well to shore up the defensive line. So the defense should be in a good spot, but offensive line again should be back. The running game will be there with AJ Dillon, who I think was really that was kind of the under talked about story of that divisional game against San Francisco. I think the offense was kind of designed in that game in those conditions to run through AJ Dillon, and he gets hurt on the first drive that resulted in the only touchdown for their offense. So we'll have him back, but you got to figure out the wide receiver position, and it's getting slimmer by the day. So.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting draft in terms of draft day trades also. I think you make a really good point in that when you have 2 first-round draft picks like that and you get to draft day and you start seeing which chips fall where and how teams are thinking about guys, that you might have a little more leverage to move up or move down or do different things in the draft. And there is some really good, in my opinion, receivers in this draft in the first round. Like you mentioned, Olave. Of course, Wilson is probably going to be the first guy off the board. I like Burks from Arkansas a lot. I think he'd be a great guy for Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, because he's about 6'2". He's a big guy. He played in the SEC. He played really well against Alabama when Arkansas played Alabama. To me, he's the kind of guy that I think you put in there. And then maybe you look at a Julio Jones or someone like that, a veteran to bring in to offset things. And like you said, you got Lazard and Randall Cobb, who's probably a step down, but as a fourth receiver, you could figure it out. But I think there's some availability still in the free agent market, but I think the draft capital is where it is. And like you said, we'll see maybe what Seattle does and how things start rolling out with them. And I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterback situation too, that Metcalf could be a guy, and even Tyler Lockett. I mean, they might decide they can't move Metcalf and they might move Lockett instead, who to me is definitely a great number one guy also. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Chris, I would really like to get your feelings on what do you think the Packers are going to do with Jordan Love at this point. I'm guessing he is in the third year of his rookie deal. I think you get a fourth year and then that fifth-year option, which would put him basically at the end of this Rodgers deal as well. Do you think they pick up the fifth-year option? I mean, at that point, he's a 5-year backup. I mean, do you think they try to move him as part of this draft capital this year?
Yeah, honestly, from my perspective, I think they should. I think the market for Jordan Love right now, and not to say it's much of a market, but it's as robust as it's ever going to be, in my opinion. Barring something, terrible happens with Aaron Rodgers, he's not really going to get a chance to showcase what he has on the field this season. And you have a situation right now where this is a draft where the QB position in particular is not good, right? There are not many, NFL projected prospects in the QB field. So with that being said, and this kind of goes off of what we were talking about earlier, that, with all the parity at the QB position in the league, there's not a whole lot of need for quarterbacks. But, I think what would be the smart decision to do right now is to try to move them and try to get some additional draft capital back, maybe some late round picks. I think you could probably get, a fifth and a sixth or something like that for him right now. And personally, I think that's a smart move. I don't foresee, from what we've seen from him, I don't foresee him being an NFL starter. That being said, I think there is good value for him as a backup. But from the Packers standpoint right now, we're in an all-in position because of the contract that we just gave Rodgers. And why not work some capital into the draft off the back of Jordan Love? I think from a front office standpoint, they're probably just a little bit gun shy based on all the noise that they made to bring him in. To just move him for a 5th or 6th round draft pick, but the market's not going to be any better than it is right now for him. So I don't really foresee it playing out this way. I think they will retain him, and getting into next offseason, talk about picking up the 5th-year option, or maybe at that point a better market has been established for him, but. In my opinion, I just don't foresee the market getting any better for him than it is right now with the way that the draft is, lined up right now at the QB position. So I think it would be smart to move him.
Yeah, it kind of interesting. Sam Howell, the North Carolina quarterback, had his pro day today, and I heard that every team had a representative there to watch him, which is kind of interesting. And I heard he was really good today. I'll have to go watch it after we're done on the podcast. I'll flip on the NFL Network to see more what they're saying. But a guy that you haven't heard too much about going into this draft, and all of a sudden now he's the guy that's like catching fire out of nowhere, and everybody's went to see him, and everyone in North Carolina today is talking about Sam Howell and not the UNC Duke matchup. But yeah, I think the Jordan Love thing is interesting. I know it lit a fire on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they drafted him, and he won 2 MVPs and basically got himself another $150 million in salary because he definitely felt slighted. I think he knew about the Devontae Adams situation. I think if he didn't, we would have already heard something from him because he's not someone that keeps his mouth shut. Yeah. But I also think they've told him that they're going to either get him a number 1 receiver or finally draft a receiver in the 1st round because we know how quickly he'll start chirping and things will go downhill real fast. And I don't think they want to go that route. I think they've made a big investment here. And like you said, their defense is solid. I like what they're doing with the running back situation. They're keeping Aaron Jones, keeping AJ Dillon. And as we know, the North is just still weak. It's still not a division where anyone really scares you. I think you'll see the Packers right back where they were last year. Maybe not at another 13-win season, but win the North and put themselves in position to make some moves in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Vin. And if you look at the NFC as a whole, too, I mean, it's just not as strong as the AFC. There's it's a little bit more top heavy. But as far as bringing in a number 1 receiver, you made some good points earlier. Julio Jones is certainly an option. Obviously, unfortunately, coming off an injury-riddled season, didn't really produce much. Another name that is a potential candidate is AJ Green, right? To just kind of bring in a veteran guy who's been around the league, who can work in a repertoire with Aaron Rodgers pretty quickly. And then, another guy that's on the roster right now is Amari Rodgers. He was kind of an underutilized guy last season, just as a rookie, primarily on special teams. Wasn't really great on special teams, unfortunately, and probably hurt himself getting onto the field. But, the guy's, I think he's the 2nd or 3rd leading receiver in Clemson history. So he's got potential. So we'll see how that works in, but they absolutely have to make some kind of move, whether it's through the draft, trading up to get one of these big name wide receivers in the 1st round. I think that, along with signing, a big veteran presence, Lockett, Julio Jones, or AJ Brown, nice. AJ Green, sorry.
Yeah, no, really good, Mike. I know you wanted to dig into some of Chris's background with Packer tickets and the Ranger stuff and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I think, Chris comes from a very sports-oriented family, and we've had these conversations. So, love you to talk to our viewers about just your passion for the Packers, and I think it was maybe your grandfather with the getting the tickets because it's so hard to get. So I'd love to hear just about the Mangano sports legacy and just the passion for the Packers. So please.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it really started with my dad. He was born in '59, so grew up as a young kid watching the Packers. Obviously, the two big teams at the time in the '60s were the Packers and the Cowboys, and that's kind of when the Cowboys established themselves as America's team. And he decided to go another route. He loved obviously Vince Lombardi era and Ray Nitschke and Bart Starr and all those historic Packers of the '60s, and jumped on the bandwagon. And I have to say I have him to thank for a lot of it. Just being an incredibly passionate sports fan. So he actually put his name on the waiting list for season tickets at Lambeau, I believe when he was 8 years old. He put his name on the waiting
smart kid.
Yeah. And yeah, even still, believe the waiting list right now is about 115 years. The Packers are the last organization that allows you to will your season tickets down. So if you have season tickets, nobody gives them up. Fast forward 30 years or so, he was working in the sports business, and I was actually working at the NBA. And struck up a friendship with the guy who headed the Packers ticket office at the time, who was a huge Chicago Bulls fan. So this was, early '90s when the Bulls were winning NBA championships and everything. And, basically kind of struck a deal of sorts and, got him a bunch of NBA final seats to go see the Bulls. And in return, got his name bumped up to the top of the list. So he got season tickets in Lambeau, I want to say '93. It's been a fun run ever since. For us, obviously, he's from New Jersey. We grew up in New Jersey, but Lambeau Field in Green Bay has just always been a special place to him and to us as well. So I've been going out there since I was in diapers, and can remember, and I'm thankful for that. That he kind of brought me into that fold because. A Packers fan or not, I think most people would agree that Lambeau Field is the mecca of football, and to have witnessed so many games there and great moments there, from playoff games to championship games, has been a defining moment in my sports career. That's kind of how it came to be. We try to get up there for a few games every season and see the Packers. Obviously, it's become a passion for us and part of our lives. It's been great. Packers have always been, since I was a little kid, ingrained in my memory. Before the days of DirecTV and being able to record games live. I remember he had a VHS set up, and he would record every single Packers game on tape, and we go back and watch highlights and stuff. It's a big part of my childhood. And, as far as being a Packers fan, it's it's something that's kind of defined me ever since.
I'm just going to defer all the Packer questions I get all the time to you from now on.
Happy to provide insight.
I know you're a huge New York Rangers fan. And I know I don't think we've had a single minute of this podcast dedicated to hockey at all. So it's kind of I'm happy to push New York Rangers hockey. I always find it very interesting that despite the Rangers having the '94 Cup and 54 years before that, and the only cup really over an 80+ year period, that they've always had tremendous goaltending, and they continue to have that to this day. And I think that's one of the reasons they're in the position they're in right now. And Chris, maybe you could talk a little bit more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point, Vin. I mean, obviously, historically, the Rangers have had, Hall of Fame style goaltenders. Obviously, most recently, Henrik Lundqvist, and now the torch has been passed on to Igor Shesterkin. I think a big guy over the last few years, probably an unsung hero in the mix, it's Benoit Lair, who's been the Rangers goaltending coach for years now, and Henrik Lundqvist probably, credits a lot of his career to him as a coach, and to see what he's doing for Shesterkin right now. Shesterkin obviously came up in the KHL. He was a goaltender in his early years for St. Petersburg, who's obviously one of the best teams in the KHL, which is second best league in the world after the NHL. So had a very good professional career before he came to the Rangers. So when he came in, he was 24 years old, a little bit older, a little bit more seasoned. And you see where he is right now. He's probably best chance to win a Vezina Trophy this year. He's been absolutely unreal. And the Rangers have really just kind of styled their game, after him, right? He's just makes save after save after save, and it's not necessarily a great way to go deep into the playoffs, but dealing with some injuries right now. They made a lot of moves at the trade deadline. They've shored up. The defense is probably one of the better units in the league, and they're playing really well in front of them. So it's an exciting time right now for the Rangers. They've had a lot of really good teams. They certainly made their run when they had Lundqvist. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. They had that heartbreaking 5 games against the LA Kings in the Stanley Cup Finals back in 2015, and it's been a quick rebuild since then, right? Obviously, it was kind of on the decline. They'd gone all in, a lot of veteran players, moved a lot of their young pieces, and they went to the farm system, and now it's starting to pay off. A lot of draft capital. Some of the best developmental players in the game right now, and it's really showing. They made a lot of really good moves at the trade deadline to shore up some of the deeper lines, third and fourth line. Frank Vetrano, just had 2 goals last night, and now they're in the driver's seat. They're in a position right now where they're sitting in 3rd place in the Met, and they're playing Pittsburgh tomorrow night to get the one up on them. So, all signs are leading to a Pittsburgh Rangers first round playoff matchup, which will be electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But from a goaltending standpoint, Vid, and it's been a long-standing run of great goaltending for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. It amazes me. I remember sitting years ago. My dad had a relationship with Phil Esposito back in the day when he was the GM, and he would give my dad a couple tickets right alongside the goalie line there, and Van Beesbrook, was the goalie back then when Esposito was the GM. All 5'2" of them, the same height that Mike is. But
why do you keep saying that? I am taller than you.
But Mike Richter was a rookie when I would go then, and Tony Granato was on that team, and Brian Leach was a rookie. So. But from Van Beesbrook to Richter to Lundqvist, like you said, it's been a very long run of great goaltending. So it always interests me, to see where they continue that run to today. And like you said, for them to be able to play Pittsburgh in the first round, and I think people around in this area are always thinking about Boston and Pittsburgh and the Islanders and the Devils. It all coincides with each other, and it, hockey gets a little bit of a backseat in this area, but when playoffs start and MSG comes into the mix, all of a sudden, you turn on the local news, and for some reason it's the first thing that's a run, because the Rangers are the team that everyone's looking at. So
that's such a good
exciting.
point. And best sport to watch live by far is hockey.
Oh,
hands down.
Yeah, but it's an injustice to watch it on TV.
I just want one follow-up question for you, Chris, with hockey. As Vinny was saying, it kind of takes a back seat, and until playoff time. So what do you think as far as the viewership in hockey? We all know that it's kind of gone, down, and there's locally you'll see true diehard fans, but what do you think it's going to take for hockey to really just get up there to where it was? I mean, obviously in Canada it's looked upon differently than the U.S., but as far as viewership and just getting back there, what do you think has to be done, or what's being done?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. Good question. I think a lot's being done. I think the biggest thing that hockey needs to do is that they need to market their stars a little bit better than they do currently. I mean, outside of hockey circles, people know Ovechkin, people know Sidney Crosby, but guys like I don't know, Leon Draisaitl, or in the Rangers world, Artemi Panarin. Like a lot of people, sports fans don't know these types of names. But I think and just what you guys are saying, right? Hockey is a sport that's meant to be watched live, and that's kind of what the league thrives on, is getting people in the seats and having people watch it live. And teams, they've done a really good job of making that more accessible. It's not as relevant in MSG, because it's still the most expensive seat in the league, but in other markets, they're making it very accessible to people, and the league has come a long way. The game is a lot more marketable. I think a lot of diehard hockey fans maybe felt a certain way about, taking fighting out of the game to an extent, where it's still a very relevant part of the game, but it's not as physical a sport as it necessarily used to be. Still extremely physical, but the real brutal aspect, they've done a good job of taking that out of the game. And a lot of people felt a certain way about it, but at the end of the day, it makes the sport more marketable. So I think over the last few years, they've done a really good job with that. Obviously, the ESPN deal is huge for them, right? Because hockey was always on either local networks or one big game a night on NBC Sports. But
Now
now
they got on TNT, right?
TNT and ESPN Plus is taking on a bunch of games. So ESPN is really pushing the NHL, which is great. And bringing in a lot of great color commentary. Wayne Gretzky now doing color commentary, and Biz from Spittin' Chicklets, which is obviously a podcast that's getting a lot of traction in the hockey world and elsewhere on Barstool. So I think hockey has definitely come a long way. But I think a big part of that is making the players a little bit more marketable, and they've done a really good job of making the teams a little bit more marketable, doing some of these different jersey campaigns that fans are really jumping on, which is really cool. A lot of these events. I was actually down in Nashville for the Stadium Series game a few weeks ago, and I could not believe the amount of hockey fans that descended on Nashville for the game. It was unbelievable to see. The building was packed. Everywhere you looked, there was even Tampa Bay Lightning fans who, Tampa Bay was playing in the game. Lightning jerseys all over the place, Nashville jerseys all over the place, and just hockey fans in general. So that was really cool to see. This is going to be a great playoffs. I mean, it's really shaping up to be some unbelievable series, right? There is so much parity at the top of the end of the league right now. Going to have some great series, and going off March Madness conversation earlier, that being the best tournament in sports, I think the Stanley Cup playoffs is right there as well as just one of the most exciting tournaments that there are in sports. So they're doing a lot to grow the game. Obviously it is what it is in Canada, but in the States too, they're doing a really nice job and making it accessible to markets that weren't previously hockey markets. I mean, you look at obviously success brings fans in the stadium, but look at a team like the Florida Panthers, right? They're arguably the best team in the league right now, and they're packing that building every night now. So it's good to see.
Yeah,
Right.
no, that's awesome. It's really, really awesome. And nothing helps the sport like a New York team being good and being on the front page of every newspaper out there. So let's hope we see that as the Stanley Cup playoffs start. So that'll be exciting. But Chris, thank you for spending time with us tonight. It was a lot of good conversations. Really appreciate you digging into a lot of different topics for us and really getting into it. I'd definitely like to, if the Rangers get into the deep into the playoff run, we'll definitely have to bring you back on and give us a little analysis on that. That's definitely something we'll definitely have to do. So thanks again. Mike, anything else?
No, great show. Really looking forward to this Final Four. It's going to be something. Will Coach K go on? Find out.
Yeah. And I'm happy you didn't fall asleep the last half hour like you did the last 6 shows. So that's good.
He picks on me so much, Chris. I don't know.
He's ready to run on stage and give me a smack.
Yeah. I'm going to get smacked. Chris, thank you so much. It's episode 11 already. Vinny said something last podcast that 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 10. So
we're excited. It's been a lot of fun. We're having a really good time, and we'll be back next week for episode 12. We're going to actually talk about the Masters tournament next week, so that'll be fun for us. So everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll be here next week.
Thanks, Vin.
Been a pleasure, guys.